Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy-nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
I'm Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and today we're joined by Tara Johnson. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so I always ask first question, tell us all about who you are and why you do what you do.
Well, I am a mom living in Concord, Massachusetts. I do have two boys, ages 12 and 14. I live with my husband, Adam, and our miniature schnauzer, Mr. Pickles. I got started and I do what I do, primarily beginning at a point of being a maker. I am an artist at my core. And I love creating things. I love telling stories. So I kind of took a circuitous way here as an agency owner, which is what I do now. We help small to mid-size service-based businesses tell their story and elevate their branding and their marketing. That is called Alchemy 3. And then we have another brand, Alchemy Wealth Marketing, where we do much of the same kind of work, but for female-led financial advisory practices and some solo practitioners as well. So I originally got a degree in photography, and I thought I was going to make art forever. I thought I was going to live in the dark room, and I was going to make fabulous work and just sort of be recognized for my mind-blowing talents. But once I get out of school, I realized it doesn't work that way. I hated computers in the beginning. Of course, everything went to digital very quickly once I got out of school. So I learned Photoshop. I was hooked. I realized I do, in fact, love design, went back and got my associates, freelanced for a while, tried very hard to make it in the corporate space. But within a few weeks of each job I would try, I realized it's not for me. I'm well suited working for myself as opposed to others. I do what I do because I love helping people. I love solving problems and I love telling stories. And on the female-led financial advisory practice side of things, that is such a male-dominated industry. And as a feminist, I want to lift those women up and bolster community and facilitate conversations. And also, the concept of building wealth, I would love for that to be much more accessible to everyone, as opposed to just the privileged, right? And the folks who have been brought up to understand these components. So yeah, we want to help people. I want to connect folks and tell stories.
So all kinds of yes to that. I'm like nodding so much and yes, and ready to scream it from the rooftops. Like I feel like the same way when it comes to making everything accessible, right? Coming back to the point of like everyone deserves a seat at the table, regardless where you are in your financial journey. And you and I have chatted about this before, the misnomers of seeing the commercials. Well, if you have $1 million, call us. If you've got $10 million, call us. Well, where does everybody else go? I mean, everyone else deserves the exact same seat at a table to inspire themselves, lift themselves, and quite frankly, get themselves to those levels as well, whatever their financial goal is. So I think that's, so excited and huge
100%.
that empowering women along the way, women and others, truly, but same thing. We lean into a lot of, education and empowerment for women just on the finance side.
And there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens, and it's wild to me, right? And I'm coming from the creative side. I'm learning a lot of these concepts as I go. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to connect with folks like yourself, Jennifer, who are doing that good work. And as opposed to hiding behind terminology, you're walking folks through that process in a way that meets them wherever they are. And that's absolutely what we're all about. In addition to also empowering the women and the practices that are doing this work and positioning them in a way that allows them to differentiate their own personalities so that folks can resonate with those humans on a human level. That's ultimately what sets these practitioners apart. And that's what beginners in particular, that's what they're looking for. They want that connection. Because at the end of the day, we want to work with other human beings that really get us and are willing to listen and are willing to hold our hands and guide us through
I mean,
that
there's
process.
so many different ways we can go with this conversation, and I'm excited about all of them. I feel like the relationship is so huge because at the end of the day, can you go to most advisors and do they have similar products? Some do, some don't. Some are proprietary only for that firm. Some are open architecture where they can support in any way and truly act as fiduciaries. But I think truly at the end of the day, it comes down to the relationship. Um, I have a story that kind of fits within this too. I have a gal who came to me, her husband had just passed, and the family's best friend was a financial advisor. Deep relationship, had it for 30 plus years, right?
Mhm.
Very deep knowing relationship. Family elements overlapped everything. At the end of the day, she goes back to kind of what you were talking about, the whole foreign language of finance. And it was I don't think, again, I don't know the other advisor, but I don't think it was meant to be demeaning. But in the conversation, it was like, oh, you'll be fine, and kind of a pat on the head, I'll take care of you. But she
Right.
wanted the conversation of like, what am I doing? What do I have? Here are my goals. I really want to talk this through, be handheld along the way, but have an
Mhm.
understanding of what was happening. And in that moment, she told me she didn't feel comfortable asking any questions because it was so like, oh, you'll be fine, pat, pat. Right. And again, I don't think it came from a crappy place. I think not knowing the advisor, but truly, but at the end of the day, that wasn't warming up her heart to what she needed to be able to move forward.
And it can feel very dismissive. And there's so much shame and there's a lot of vulnerability. And I know you talk about this a lot on your podcast. There's a lot of money stories and memories that we bring with us. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and to sort of get a read on that comfort level, those personal stories, and then kind of bake in that education and make sure that it is in fact that they're able to wrap their heads around it, not out of stupidity. It's you don't know what you don't know, and that goes the same with marketing, right? I mean, that's a lot of what we do for our clients is business owners and founders, especially when they're starting out. They feel that need to suddenly become a digital marketer, and so they're posting on social media and they're writing copy for their website, which is all wonderful, by the way, but does it make good sense and is it a good use of your time necessarily? Not so much. And there's no reason, why you need to suddenly become a professional in that way. And so having a financial professional that is in good hands is critical, because knowledge is power. You need to be able to ask those questions.
Yeah, and if you are an expert in your field, which people are in all different fields across the way, not everyone can be an expert in every field. And
No,
why not
right.
lean in to somebody that is so you can really help and empower and move forward with the field that you are an expert in? Wholeheartedly agree.
100%. It should always be who, not how, right? Especially once you reach a certain level,
Yeah.
find those people that you can partner with and folks you can trust and you can grow with over time. I feel like that's just so essential.
And I think it's the whole concept of, I always visualize this when I think about it. It's like, as we lift others, they lift others. And this continues this beautiful chain behind the scenes, whether that be, I always think about, my team having interns, being able to lift them, grow them, see if this is an industry they want to be in. Then in
Right.
turn, as we're lifting the team is in turn lifting clients and helping out. And it's beautiful because it trickles everywhere. And then generations behind us that we don't even know about. Hopefully there's going to be more lifting and supporting and empowering along the way.
So much, yes. And there's a lot of wealth in the world. It's not a finite resource. And so it's important to kind of have that abundance mindset and to provide help when you can, no strings attached. Because listen, all that information is out there. It's available. It's just a matter of finding the right person to sort of guide you through that process. And the fact that you're willing to step in the mentorship piece I hold so close to my heart. For women in particular, I think that's so tremendously important. And I'm really glad that you're incorporating that into your practice. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, another thing we talk through on the podcast are money memories. And everybody has one. I find it so fascinating. That's why I started the podcast to begin with, was I was
Yeah.
hearing these from clients from all different backgrounds, all different races, religions, creeds, whatnot, right? But everyone has a money memory. So what was your money memory that you had as a younger person or teenager or whatever that really sticks in your mind that helped molded your relationship to money as an adult?
Well, thinking back, I was pondering this a little bit earlier this week, and I come back to this time and time again. So in the early days, my parents sort of brought us up to not engage in credit cards. You don't have a credit card, it's only going to lead to trouble, which of course kind of leads you to this place of internalizing your ability to manage money, right? So it was kind of this, it was implied that because of our age, and I say our, I'm talking about myself and my siblings, we couldn't possibly understand what that means to have a credit card. So we just never had one. I had a debit card only and a savings account almost through till the end of college. And I remember chatting with a dear friend of mine, and I was, of course, looking to purchase a really fancy camera because I was studying photography at the time. And he had mentioned, taking out a credit card. And I was so against that. Credit cards are evil, they're bad news. And he had to explain to me what credit is and what it does for you and why it's important, right? Like these concepts had kind of, first of all, they weren't explained to me in any thoughtful way, which, no shade on my parents, but that's just kind of how it was. They felt like they were protecting me and kind of trying to set me up for success in their own way. But it had also kind of been demonized, right?
You are listening to the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
Hey, it's Jennifer. I wanted to take a quick break to remind you that you are worthy to have a seat at the table when it comes to money and your finances. We, both me and my team at Platinum Wealth Management, want to meet you where you are, whether you're starting out, starting over, or have been investing for years. Reach out to us at platinumwealth.net or call us at 775-717-0001. We'd be honored to help.
And now, back to the podcast.
That having that credit card, and what I came to learn over time, especially as I was looking toward purchasing a home with my now husband, it's essential, right? You have to have that history. You need to be able to show up and prove that you can purchase things and pay them off and be a responsible human. And so I often think of that conversation in a camera store with my friend who had to, kind of give me that come to Jesus talk of credit cards actually do serve a purpose and can be very important.
That's interesting. I mean, because obviously there's the flip side of that story of folks who don't know, who aren't disciplined, who get themselves in debt. I mean, I was guilty of that in college too, because they had a quad set up on my college campus, and there was all these booths that will give you a bag of M&Ms and a free t-shirt
Sure.
and a pizza. And I'm like, yes, I need
Yeah,
all
let's
of
go.
this, all of it. And I, granted, got myself in debt, paying off school and everything else, like most of America in some
Mm,
cases. However, I did pay it off, and it was painful and long, but I paid off every penny. And it was a huge learning experience for me. But then on the flip side, there's got to be a happy medium there. Like, I think they can be good if you're disciplined. I don't think that they're completely terrible, because you can get airline points and travel points and whatever's important to you if you are
yeah,
paying off the entire balance every single month. But
that's right.
then for the folks that don't know and who are maybe not as disciplined, maybe that's not a good direction for them. And I think this is
Sure.
where that personal conversation comes into, and establishing credit. I mean, even if you're buying a pair of socks once a month and you're charging it and you're paying it off immediately, at least it's creating a credit score for you so you can move
Hmm.
forward and buy a house and do bigger purchases later in life.
That's right. Yeah. And to that point, you just sort of reminded me of sort of the flip side of those tendencies as I was learning how to adult, right, and kind of become a responsible human.
Still learning.
Right, still learning, right? We never have that all figured out for sure. Whenever I would hit a wall in terms of my journey or direction or whatever I was going to do next, right, I would graduate, and I'd wait tables for a while, and I was still sort of hanging on to, oh, I'll make art. That'll be my occupation. Um, and then my answer, whenever I would run out of ideas or kind of get tired of the rat race, is I would just re-enroll in school, right? And just
Mm,
take out loans and not really pay attention to what that meant and what those, what the payback would look like over time. And that got me into a wee bit of trouble as well, because I feel like I was a little addicted to going back to school time and time again. So yeah, it's interesting, and it is, they're great learning experiences across the board, certainly. Um, but yeah, you just sort of pull the wool over your eyes sometimes because there doesn't seem to be a better option.
totally. And I think if we can chalk them up to learning experiences where we've navigated through, but really if we're open to sharing them on platforms like this, hopefully others
Yes.
can learn from it. I think that's so valuable because money was, and still is to a certain extent, I feel like so taboo where you didn't discuss it, right? You didn't discuss certain things, and money was one on the big top of the pile of like you didn't talk through it. And I feel like there's so many learning experiences where if we hear, a nugget from someone else of, oh, they went through that, you're not
Hmm.
feeling so alone anymore. But if you can learn something along the way from someone else's journey, I think that's so invaluable.
Absolutely. And the stigma that money has, it drives me bananas, it's so valuable to be able to have those conversations in a really honest way. And I do think there is a wave of financial feminism that's coming, or is, there's little starter seeds of that happening now. I think women are starting to have these deeper conversations and are being much more honest with one another, and to your point, lifting each other up. And we want to be able to cut corners and make progress as quickly as possible, and we do that by learning from the lessons that others have learned along the way.
And and to your point, I mean, the wealth transfer is happening. Women
Yes.
are going to be the lead in trillions of dollars, and it's already happening now, right? From women making more in professions, from inheritances, from divorces, from, creating their own wealth and their own companies and their own different things. I mean, that money transfer is happening. Women are coming more in power to definitely
Right.
their own finances. And I feel like this is such an important time in history. I think it's a little
Yes.
overdue personally, but I think it's such an
Uh,
important time in history that's happening right now in front of us.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. 100%.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
So, another thing we talk through, and I always tease it's kind of a big, scary, hairy conversation for some folks, are financial infidelities, which another thing that can mean different things to different people. What's something that you either experienced or that you witnessed that you think others could learn from when it comes to financial infidelities?
Well, I think of this, what I call kind of an early adulting whoopsie that my husband and I made prior to being married. But we owned a home at this time, and we were in the process of um, trading in a car. All right, so we had this kind of junky car. We didn't want it anymore. And I decided that I needed a scooter because that's what designers want. That's what artists like. They want scooters. And so we decided to trade in this car for a scooter, which was garbage. And I got into a little trouble. I sort of managed to tip the thing, and it was
Oh
not
no.
very well made, right? Um, we went back to that dealership. This is maybe an example of easy come, easy go, I guess, right? So we had a garbage car, we sort of traded for this equally horrible scooter, and then we bring it back to that same dealership, and they were like, look, we can trade that scooter for this shiny red Range Rover Land Rover. And we were like, cool, let's go. This is great. Except we owed somewhere in the vicinity of 10K to 13K. So we went for it, right? We thought this was a really great idea. Also, they made it so easy for us. So there was no due diligence. So fast forward, I want to say 3 to 4 months, this car was having problems. It turns
Mm.
out that it needed a new engine. It was
Oh,
notorious for having all kinds of trouble. And because my husband and I really aren't great shoppers, we kind of have short we get kind of bored and we're ready to just pull the trigger and move forward, we got ourselves into a little bit of a pickle there with that car. And so we learned a really valuable lesson. You got to do your research. That's a big ticket item, and maybe don't go after a silly scooter for no good reason, right? Like it was this fun, uh, just spur of the moment. It's shiny red. Let's go for it. And it didn't work out so well. We did manage to get rid of it, but we did take a hit.
And the creative, quote unquote, financing that happens behind the scenes as you're
Yes.
not paying off the scooter and it's labeled into your next thing and everything gets smushed
Right.
together and it's just a sign here moment.
Yes. And that was so easy. That was so easy for us to do. And that's what gets you into trouble, right?
Mm. And I'm sure you are not alone, and people are listening are like, yes, I did the same thing. Maybe not with a scooter, but yes,
But like
yes.
how we managed to go from this kind of garbage starter car to a really fancy, shiny, Range Rover, Land Rover that effectively was breaking 4 months down the road. That was a painful lesson for us to learn.
But when you learned along the way.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure thing.
Well, as we wrap the conversation, what are some tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your own household?
Well, I am still a maker, right? I still am
I was going to
very
ask you that.
creative.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so I love reusing things or giving them new life in interesting ways. So I do love perusing online auctions. I like making little field trips to go pick up various treasures, some of which you'll see, hanging in the background here. And especially when items have a story and there's a history there, or there's an interesting texture or color palette, or you can see where it's been worn in different places. I love those things. It feels warm and interesting and just adds life to the home. So I like to grab some of those secondhand items and refinish them, repurpose them in various ways. And I love to work over Facebook Marketplace pretty hard, right? So that's
Ah,
another piece. I think not buying new and grabbing things used as often as possible. Also, when having children, by the way, because you can't have nice things when you have kids. You just can't. That's definitely one way that we kind of cut corners a little bit and still have the things that we want, and it's more interesting as a result.
so mine's similar. I love vintage. Love it so
Mm,
much. And I
yeah.
love it's funny. We tease in my household like I want a $200 shirt for $5 with a coupon. I don't care if it's used or whatever, like, and it's from 1973. Well, maybe not 1973, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But something that I can love, and then when I don't love it anymore, I can put it back out in the universe for someone else to love it. I think that is the best.
absolutely.
So
It's
fun.
best. It is so fun. That is my favorite. And yeah, a lot of, of course, we could talk about the environmental impacts of all kinds of things, but that's just a really nice kind of takeaway as well, right? I mean, so many of these items that we have, it's so short-lived, the time that they spend with us. And those really quality items, the interesting pieces should really go, you're kind of a steward of these things and they should be passed on to others.
And then it's not a, I mean, not to keep going down this path, but I love it so much. But it's not a cookie cutter moment either, right? Then there's unique branding to yourself or what you're wearing or what's in your home. It's not the same. And not that anything's wrong with the same, but I do love things that are different and unique for me.
Me too. And I'm not like a matchy type of gal. There's a we have a lot of eclectic items. And so I think having like little vignettes in the house, and maybe it's strange and unusual, but it just makes sense to the family. And that's when it becomes a little more fun.
So good. Well, thank you so much for making time to share today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love this podcast and I really love what you're doing, Jennifer. Keep it up. I'm a huge
Ah,
fan.
thank you. Thank you so much. And hopefully those of you watching and or listening will join us on the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.